Oh, Lord, child, we got Tiny Harris coming on responding to these allegations that King might not be tips. Now, she might have had another relationship with some dude named Bimmy. Here go the tweet itself right here. Man, this is the biggest bullish ever. No disrespect, but I don't even know Bimmy like that. I was just reminded of who he was. Man, don't that sound a little suspicious to y'all? While it may seem suspicious, I gotta play devil's advocate because, look, I don't know what be going on in their household. Let's run down my thoughts.
Hey. BuzzBuster welcomes you back to marriage drama. What started as a public family dispute has now turned into an even bigger spectacle, and King Harris keeps finding himself at the center of the chaos. With every new update, the situation seems to get more complicated, and the latest rumors have only made things worse. Recently, talk began spreading online that T.I might not actually be King's biological father. That claim exploded across social media almost instantly, especially because it surfaced right after a very public confrontation between father and son at an Atlanta Falcons game. What could have been brushed off as a tense family moment quickly became a full-blown internet storm, with fans picking apart every clip, every comment, and every reaction. The drama first caught fire when King, who already has a reputation for being outspoken and quick to react, was seen getting into a heated exchange with another man in the stadium. The entire moment was unfolding on Instagram Live, which meant people were watching it happen in real time.
Call who you need to call, do what you need to do. Ain't nothing happening. No money, no beers, no partying, no sections, nothing. You put me and man on the flyer, give me everything.
Instead of letting the moment pass, King appeared fully committed to making a statement. At one point, he declared that he stood on business, making it clear he wanted everyone to know exactly where he stood. Rather than easing the tension, his comments seemed to intensify the scene. The energy shifted fast, and what started as an argument in the stands soon became something much larger once T.I stepped in. From his perspective, King wasn't just defending himself, he was going too far, acting tough in a way that reflected badly on the family. T.I made it known that he was not going to sit by and let the situation spiral without saying something.
As the confrontation escalated, T.I physically stepped in to restrain his son in front of the crowd. In a moment that immediately spread online, he put King in a headlock in an attempt to get control of the situation. For many people watching, it was shocking enough to see a disagreement between father and son play out in public. Seeing it happen at a major sporting event with cameras rolling and social media already locked in took the embarrassment and tension to another level entirely.
It's not to go.
All right, then. There it goes.
In your ear.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I had in the neighborhood with me that broke up with y'all want to go to the bando and man my neighborhood? Do y'all want to go to the bando? Do y'all want to go to the bando? To make him look better, he said he know not true.
Naturally, that wasn't the end of it. Only hours later, King returned to Instagram and made it clear that he was nowhere near ready to let the issue go. Instead of cooling off, he launched into a fresh round of criticism aimed directly at his father. His tone was defiant, and one of the clearest messages he sent was simple: "I am a mature man." That statement alone told viewers everything they needed to know about where his mindset was. King wanted independence. He wanted respect. Most of all, he wanted people to stop treating him like a child. That is where the story really starts to take on a bigger meaning. This was no longer just about one argument at a football game. It had become a very public clash over identity, control, and pride inside one of hip-hop's most recognizable families. Every move was being dissected online, and every reaction seemed to fuel more speculation.
So I've made a decision. Until he learns how to take responsibility for himself, I will no longer carry the consequences for him as his father. But if one day he truly stops and changes, then I will still be his father. I choose to set family ties aside.
Once those rumors about paternity entered the conversation, the situation became even more explosive. Social media thrives on mystery and conflict, and this story had both: a famous family, a public confrontation, a son pushing back, a father stepping in. Then suddenly, a rumor that changes the entire framing of the conflict. Whether true or not, the claims spread because people were already paying attention. And once something like that catches traction online, it becomes nearly impossible to slow down.
Meanwhile, the public has been split in how they view the fallout.
Some people believe T.I. was simply trying to stop a bad situation from getting worse and prevent his son from embarrassing himself further in public. Others see King's reaction as part of a deeper struggle to break away from his father's authority and to find himself on his own terms. In that sense, what happened in Atlanta may have been just one visible chapter in a much longer tension that has been building behind the scenes. Another reason the story has stayed in the spotlight is because of how quickly it combines several ingredients that always draw attention: celebrity family conflict, live stream drama, and deeply personal accusations. Those elements turned an already awkward encounter into headline material.
You made it seem like we were sending you over there.
No.
You cried and cried and cried when you couldn't go over there.
You know what I'm saying?
You always say, King, stay home, stay home. Hey, man, you would hold your breath, turn red in the face.
Look, we done got big house, big yard, nothing to do.
That's when you learn and create your own entertainment.
I was outside. I want to play football, basketball. That's the type of one that I was.
Once clips began circulating, the internet did what it always does. It replayed the footage, analyzed body language, and built entire narratives around a few chaotic moments. At the center of all of it is King, whose actions have kept the conversation alive. His public response signaled that he was not interested in backing down quietly. T.I., on the other hand, appeared determined to reassert order in a moment he may have felt was slipping away. That clash between authority and rebellion is what made the scene so unforgettable. Now, the story has moved far beyond a single outburst. It has become a rolling controversy, with rumors, reactions, and family tension all feeding into one another. For a family this famous, private disagreements rarely stay private for long. In this case, what happened in the stands did not remain just a moment of tension at a game. It became the spark for an even larger wave of speculation that continues to spread.
His ass going to prison. If you goddamn keep that shit up, his ass going to prison. Ain't no way around it. Ain't nothing I'm gonna be able to do about it. Can't nobody stop it but him. You know what I mean? I've already had the conversation. I've already made my peace with it. Because I know that energy. I was that energy. I know exactly how it's going to turn out.
At that point, many people were saying the same thing. If I'm off base, call it out. Viewers were split over what they were watching. Was this simply another case of a famous child acting out in public? Or was there something deeper behind the behavior? By then, King was no stranger to controversy. His name had already been attached to several moments that left fans frustrated and critics even louder. One incident especially stayed in people's minds: the way he reportedly spoke to Waffle House employees. To many watching, it came across as disrespectful and dismissive, as if he believed ordinary rules did not apply to him because he is T.I.'s son. That moment fed a growing public image that King carried himself with a strong sense of entitlement. Those impressions only grew stronger after another widely discussed episode. In that situation, a homeless man was offered $50 if he could handle an extremely hot chip for 5 minutes without drinking water. Instead of reading as harmless entertainment, the scene struck many viewers as uncomfortable. The man was clearly struggling, yet King appeared to treat the whole thing like a joke.
There you go, $50, 5 minutes. Oh shit. Oh shit. Out here. Ooh-wee. It's alright? It ain't hot? You can't drink it yet though. You can't drink it yet.
For critics, it was not just poor judgment. It looked like someone turning another person's distress into a spectacle. What made the backlash even worse was King's response afterward. Rather than stepping back and admitting the situation may have gone too far, he seemed to defend his behavior. That only fueled the idea that he saw himself as too important to accept responsibility. Online, the criticism came quickly. Comment sections filled with disappointment, anger, and disbelief from people who felt he had crossed a line more than once. Public opinion became even more complicated after the fallout from the Falcons game incident. Following that breakdown, King made claims that T.I. had left him in the hood and had even mistreated him. For a lot of fans, those statements did not match the image they had long associated with his upbringing. Because he comes from a wealthy family and was raised with the advantages that come with having a millionaire father, many people dismissed those accusations outright. To them, it sounded less like a painful personal truth and more like an attempt to gain attention. Still, the story was not as simple as many assumed. Even with his parents' financial success, King reportedly spent most of his time living in the hood with his grandmother.
Yeah, man, it's a lot about that TV show, man, that got people confused. Because I live with my grandma. You know, we'll go to the house on like a weekend. They'll say, hey, we shooting today. We need y'all at the house. They'll come get me from my grandma's house. And right after we done, when them cameras go off, I'm right back to my grandma's house. Yeah.
That detail added a layer of complexity that some critics had overlooked. It did not erase the public incidents that angered viewers, but it did challenge the easy narrative that everything about his life had been comfortable and protected. That is what made the conversation around King so heated. On one side, there were those who saw repeated examples of arrogance, impulsive behavior, and a pattern of treating people poorly. On the other, there were people who believed there might be real turmoil underneath the surface, even if it was being expressed in the worst possible way. The audience was left trying to figure out whether they were seeing pure privilege, unresolved family pain, or a mix of both. Either way, the reaction was impossible to ignore. Every new incident seemed to reinforce the idea that King was stuck between two identities, the son of a major celebrity and someone determined to prove he came from a harsher reality. That tension became the center of the debate. Fans were no longer just reacting to one viral clip or one ugly moment. They were trying to understand the pattern.
And the more people looked back at everything, from the restaurant controversy to the hot chip challenge to the claims made after the Falcons game, the more divided they became. Some felt sympathy, others felt exhausted. Many simply saw someone refusing to recognize how his actions were landing with the public. In the end, that was the real reason the backlash kept growing. It was not only what King did, it was the way each episode seemed to deepen the same impression. A young man surrounded by privilege, accused of acting recklessly, while insisting there was another side to his story that most people were not willing to hear. Behind the polished image of his early years, a very different story was reportedly taking shape. As more receipts started appearing, people began looking closer at what King's childhood may have actually been like. On the surface, it seemed like he was surrounded by love and attention from his parents. Yet reports suggested that his day-to-day life did not unfold inside T.I.'s home, and that alone made his situation noticeably different from many of the other kids around him.
You made it seem like we were sending you over there.
No.
You cried and cried and cried when you couldn't go over there.
You know what I'm saying?
You always say, King, stay home, stay home. And, man, you would hold your breath, turn red in the face.
Look, we done got big house, big yard, nothing to do.
King himself reportedly shared that the moments he truly spent with his father often came when it was time to shoot Family Hustle, the family's reality series. Once filming wrapped, he would head right back outside, which painted a picture that felt far less connected than what viewers saw on screen. Instead of a full-time family setup, reports claim that T.I.'s children mainly came around for specific occasions and were not regularly living with him.
That gap between the public image and the private reality quickly became a major talking point. While Tiny and T.I were said to be traveling and focused on their own lifestyles, another detail added even more fuel to the discussion. Tiny's daughter, Zonique, revealed that she spent most of her time staying with her grandmother. For many fans, that statement reinforced the idea that the home life being presented to the public may not have told the full story. Criticism toward T.I started building fast. Viewers accused him of presenting a flawless, tightly bonded family for television while allegedly being far more distant behind the scenes. What made the conversation even more explosive was the rumor that surfaced next. According to speculation making the rounds, King had supposedly told friends that T.I was not even his biological father. That claim, whether true or not, sent shockwaves through the narrative people thought they understood. Suddenly, some observers believed they had an explanation for why King allegedly reacted so strongly whenever T.I showed him affection in public. To those who believed the rumors, it was not simply discomfort. They felt it suggested that whatever connection was being displayed openly did not reflect what their relationship was really like in private. The idea that their bond may have looked one way on camera and felt completely different off camera only made the situation seem more dramatic. Fans started questioning whether the warmth shown publicly was genuine or whether it came across as forced because of everything happening behind closed doors. Once those rumors took hold, every interaction between them was viewed through a much more suspicious lens.
What had once looked like a close family dynamic now became the center of intense speculation. Instead of focusing on the reality show's polished moments, people began dissecting the details that did not line up. The more these reports spread, the harder it became for viewers to separate the image from the allegations. And with King at the center of that conversation, the situation only grew more complicated. What started as a messy public moment quickly turned into something much bigger. Once photos of a man known as B. Anthony began spreading online, people immediately locked in on one striking detail. Many viewers thought he looked a lot like King.
Allegedly, T.I. is not King's biological father. Someone posted, I just got word from a reputable source that King was told his biological father is Bimmy, and that's why he said Tip's history is a mystery. And that is all cap. So, I wouldn't say he's lashing out, because that video that went viral had nothing to do with nothing but the fact that they were talking about he's not from the hood.
From there, the internet did what it always does best. Speculation exploded. Questions started flying across social media, with countless users wondering whether Tiny had some connection to B. Anthony, and whether this man could somehow be tied to the deeper questions surrounding King Harris. Almost overnight, the conversation stopped being just about a rebellious celebrity kid acting out. Instead, it became a story filled with rumors, hidden truths, unanswered questions, and a young man trying to figure out where he truly belongs. That shift changed everything. What first seemed like simple bad behavior suddenly looked to many people like the surface of a much more complicated family situation. At the center of it all is King, a person born into fame, money, and public attention, yet often presented as someone who may have felt out of place within his own family world. That contrast is what keeps people watching. On paper, he grew up surrounded by privilege, access, and recognition. Yet the story people keep returning to is not one of comfort. It is one of conflict, confusion, and a search for identity.
Part of what makes his situation so fascinating is the split nature of his upbringing. He was raised in the glare of his parents' celebrity, where every move could become a headline, every argument could become gossip, and every family issue could be turned into entertainment. At the same time, he has also spoken about spending time in the neighborhood with his grandmother, a completely different environment from the glamorous image people associate with his family name. Those two worlds are not the same, and moving between them could leave anyone feeling pulled in opposite directions. Because of that, some people believe King's behavior is not just about rebellion. They see it as the result of growing up between clashing realities, never fully rooted in one life or the other. One side of his world came with wealth, status, and cameras. The other came with a rougher environment, different expectations, and a different sense of survival. If that tension shaped him, then the public may be looking at someone who is not simply acting out, but trying to make sense of himself.
I know a couple of people like that. Just be mad.
I necessarily don't like young nigga energy. Like
YN energy.
Yeah, YN energy.
I mean, you are a YN, sir.
I OG YN. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of like, because the reason I say OG YN is because I learned from the stuff that I did, and I kind of tried to change for the better. And look, if I do go into the wrong way, it's for the right reason. You know what I'm saying?
As more people dig into King Harris's story, it begins to feel less like ordinary celebrity gossip and more like a real-life drama unfolding in public view. Every new clip, every resurfaced photo, and every online theory seems to add another layer. Instead of seeing a spoiled young star getting into trouble, many viewers now think they are witnessing a family narrative that may include emotional distance, unresolved pain, and truths that were never openly addressed.
Everything intensified after that Falcons football incident. Before then, much of the attention around King centered on his attitude and the way he carried himself. Afterward, the discussion took a sharp turn. Suddenly, people were no longer focused only on his behavior. They were debating what might be happening underneath it. The spotlight moved away from the image of a privileged celebrity son and landed on the possibility of deeper family fractures. One of the biggest reasons the debate continues is King's claim that he was left in the neighborhood while his father enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle. That statement hit hard online because it challenged the polished image many people had of the family. For some, his words sounded like a young man exposing emotional neglect behind the fame. To others, it sounded exaggerated, maybe even calculated. That is where public opinion splits.
One side believes King is speaking from real frustration, describing a childhood that felt unstable despite all the money and visibility around him.
When I say I was with my grandma or I lived with my grandma, they take it as a slap in the face. Because that's what the internet will be like, well, why you wasn't with? But I've always had a place to go and I was always taken care of.
Those people argue that wealth does not automatically create closeness, security, or emotional connection. From that view, a person can live around expensive things and still feel deeply alone. The other side is far less sympathetic. Critics say he may be overstating his struggles to build credibility for his rap image. In their eyes, this is less about pain and more about branding. They think he understands the power of a tough backstory and may be leaning into that narrative to shape the kind of artist he wants to become. To them, the neighborhood references, the tension, and the defiance all help create a more believable persona in hip-hop.
Still, the reason this story keeps circulating is because neither explanation fully cancels out the other. Public image and personal pain can exist at the same time. A young man can come from privilege and still carry real confusion. He can benefit from fame while also feeling disconnected from the people closest to him. That complexity is exactly why the situation has captured so much attention. What makes this especially compelling is that the audience is not just reacting to one event. They are reacting to a pattern, a tone, and a sense that there may be more beneath the surface than anyone originally realized. The viral photos of B. Anthony only push that feeling even further. Whether those theories mean anything or not, they intensified curiosity about King's background and added another mystery to an already emotionally charged public narrative. In the end, what people are really responding to is not just scandal, it is uncertainty. King Harris's story now sits at the intersection of celebrity, identity, family tension, and public perception. The longer people examine it, the less it looks like a simple case of a famous kid behaving badly. Instead, it starts to resemble something much more layered. A young man caught between two worlds, carrying questions that fame and money may never have answered. He often tries to frame himself as the overlooked one in the music world, but the story behind that image runs much deeper. For a large part of his childhood, King was reportedly raised about his grandmother instead of spending those years in a traditional day-to-day home with T.I. Because of that, many people began to question how close that father-son relationship really was. To outsiders, it sometimes looked less like a consistent family bond and more like occasional moments shared in public, especially on television. That distance had already sparked plenty of discussion online. Once whispers started spreading that T.I. might not even be King's biological father, the conversation shifted from family tension to something much bigger. What had once sounded like gossip suddenly began to feel, in the eyes of many viewers, like a real controversy. King's emotional public reactions only added to the intensity. One moment in particular caught people's attention when he told T.I. to stop presenting things to the world as if they were together, when, according to King, that was not the reality. Statements like that hit differently once the paternity rumor entered the picture. What may have sounded at first like anger or frustration started to seem more personal, more layered, and much more revealing. It did not take long for social media users to do what they always do. Online investigators immediately started digging through old photos and resurfacing images that they believed supported the rumor. Before long, side-by-side comparisons of B. Anthony and King Harris were everywhere. To many people looking at those images, the resemblance appeared striking enough to keep the speculation alive. The reaction online was instant and loud. Comment sections filled up with shocked responses, with viewers posting side-by-side screenshots and asking how anyone could ignore what they believed was an obvious similarity. The debate spread quickly, and every repost seemed to add even more fuel to the conversation. What may have started in smaller gossip circles soon became a much wider internet discussion. One of the biggest reasons the rumor kept growing was the silence surrounding it. Tiny, King's mother, has never publicly addressed the alleged connection. That absence of any clear response created a vacuum, and the internet rushed in to fill it with its own theories. Without a firm statement shutting the claim down, many people took the silence as something meaningful, whether fairly or unfairly. A direct denial might have cooled things off early. Instead, the lack of public clarification only made the speculation louder. In situations like this, silence rarely ends a story. More often, it gives people room to imagine the worst, build their own narratives, and treat rumors like confirmed facts.
That is exactly how this situation grew from quiet whispers into a full-blown public controversy. King isn't doing himself any favors when it comes to the image he presents in public. Each new incident seems to add to the same impression. Whether people are talking about him mocking Waffle House employees or bringing a homeless man into that widely criticized chip challenge, the reaction is similar.
So check it, October 14th, 2024. That's the date that changed everything for King Harris. This young blood was riding through Dunwoody, Georgia, probably thinking he was just living his best life, when boom, he nearly clipped a police cruiser pulling out of a gas station. The officer stopped him for failure to yield, noticed the smell of marijuana, and observed a firearm on Harris's hip.
Many viewers don't see a young person trying to find his identity. Instead, they see someone behaving recklessly for attention. Plenty of critics believe that is exactly the point. In their view, the outbursts are calculated. They argue he pushes these moments into the spotlight because controversy keeps his name circulating, and that kind of visibility could help move his rap career forward. To them, it looks less like self-expression and more like performance.
Still, not everyone sees it that way. Another group looks at the same behavior and sees hurt underneath it. They believe a lot of this comes from deep emotional pain, especially from growing up without a steady father figure, and from constantly feeling the need to prove he is strong enough to stand on his own. From that perspective, the tough talk starts to sound less like confidence and more like armor. The phrase, "I stand on business," feels like a shield he reaches for whenever he wants to protect himself from looking vulnerable. Those emotional cracks become even harder to ignore in the moments when he breaks down. Whenever he cries, there is a sense that something much deeper is happening beneath the anger and the bravado. It doesn't come across as simple frustration. It feels like a young man carrying conflict he doesn't know how to express cleanly. Someone desperate to be seen, heard, and respected. At the center of all of this is one clear need. King seems determined to earn respect, not just from the public, but especially from his own father. That tension was on full display during the Falcons game incident. The scene of T.I. correcting him, followed by the headlock moment that quickly turned into the week's biggest meme, gave the internet exactly the kind of clip it loves to replay. For viewers, it became instant viral content. For King, it looked far more personal. What made that moment so striking was how public it was. To many people watching, it did not look like ordinary discipline. It looked like a family conflict spilling out in front of everyone. And once that happens online, the embarrassment grows fast. Instead of being treated like a serious personal issue, it became a joke, a talking point, and a meme cycle all at once. That kind of public humiliation can hit especially hard for someone who already seems to be struggling with pride and identity. That helps explain why his later Instagram rant landed with so much emotion behind it. The response didn't feel random. It felt like the release of someone who had reached a breaking point after being embarrassed in full view of the public. In that moment, he seemed to reveal more than he probably intended, essentially showing the world just how deep the frustration, hurt, and need for validation really go. Instead of feeling genuinely cherished, he's said to feel more like an accident, a kid who only seems to matter when a camera is rolling. That alone would be troubling, but King is far from the only person in the family to hint at that kind of experience. Zanique has shared something similar. She said her mother and T.I. were frequently away, constantly traveling, and because of that, she spent much of her time being raised by her grandmother. That detail changes the picture in a major way. It suggests a household where the parents were busy building a brand, a business, and a public legacy, while the children were often left without the steady presence and guidance people assumed came with that success. For longtime viewers, that shift in perspective hits hard. Many people grew up watching this family work, win, and present themselves as close-knit on VH1. On screen, they looked polished, affectionate, and united. The image was strong enough that audiences believed they were watching something authentic, something solid. Now, as more of these personal complaints surface, some are starting to question whether that version of the family was ever as complete or as genuine as it appeared. That realization stings because people didn't just casually watch. They invested in that image for years. Viewers rooted for it. They trusted it. They saw a family that seemed to balance fame, hustle, and love, and they accepted that story at face value. When the people inside that story begin describing a very different reality, the disappointment feels personal. Even more striking is the way T.I. has responded, because his reactions seem inconsistent enough to raise even more questions. In some situations, he appears ready to defend King publicly.
The Waffle House incident is one example often brought up, where he brushed off his son's disrespectful attitude as if it were nothing especially serious. That kind of response can come across as protective, almost as though he's trying to shield King from criticism and keep the situation from growing. Yet in other moments, the energy changes completely. During the Falcons game, for example, he was quick to call King out in public. Instead of softening the conflict, he seemed willing to correct him openly, and that only intensified the feeling that King was being put on display. From King's perspective, that kind of switch-up could easily feel isolating. One moment he's defended, the next he's being publicly checked. There's no stable message in that. That inconsistency is what makes the divide seem even deeper. If the response changed from one incident to the next in a clear, understandable way, people might be less suspicious. Instead, the mixed signals leave room for interpretation. Support starts to look selective. Discipline starts to feel performative. Every public moment becomes something people dissect. Once the paternity rumor enters the conversation, the situation becomes even more charged. Suddenly, ordinary gestures don't look ordinary anymore. A hug, a defense, a public appearance together, everything gets examined through a different lens.
So I've made a decision. Until he learns how to take responsibility for himself, I will no longer carry the consequences for him as his father. But if one day he truly stops and changes, then I will still be his father. I choose to set family ties aside.
What might otherwise seem like a father trying to hold his family together becomes, in the eyes of critics, something more calculated.
That's why some people argue that T.I.'s on-camera affection toward King doesn't feel sincere. They believe those moments are meant for the audience as much as they are for his son, maybe even more. To them, the warmth looks staged, like part of preserving a family image that has already started to crack. Whether that reading is fair or not, it shows just how much trust has been lost. Once people begin doubting the authenticity of the relationship itself, every interaction starts to look like a performance. At the center of all this is a painful contrast between public image and private emotion. The family that once seemed like a symbol of loyalty and togetherness is now being viewed through stories of distance, absence, and unresolved hurt. That shift doesn't happen overnight. It built slowly, piece by piece, with every comment, every contradiction, and every uncomfortable public exchange. What makes this especially sad is that none of these concerns revolve around fame alone. They point to something much more basic: the need to feel wanted, supported, and seen when no audience is around. If a child grows up believing attention only arrives when it benefits the family brand, that can leave a lasting mark. It can turn ordinary conflict into something much heavier. Now, people who once admired the family dynamic are being forced to reconsider what they were really watching. Maybe the success was real, and maybe the love was there too, but the polished version shown to the public may have hidden a great deal of strain underneath. That possibility is what keeps this story so compelling. It isn't just about arguments or rumors. It's about what happens when a carefully built image collides with the voices of the people who lived behind it. Every time King reaches a breaking point, a lot of people take it as proof that he is finally saying what he really believes. What makes the situation even more intense is that this is not a private disagreement happening behind closed doors. The distrust keeps repeating itself, and it is all unfolding where everyone can watch it online. Meanwhile, the rap world has definitely been paying attention. Conversations about King rarely stay focused on his music for long. Instead of talking about his lyrics, delivery, or artistic growth, people keep circling back to the same questions. Is he truly connected to the life he talks about? Has he had too much handed to him? Is his father really the person the public has always assumed? Those doubts have become louder than the songs themselves. As a result, his career has been pushed into the background by the drama surrounding his name. His records barely get room to stand on their own because the speculation is so overwhelming. Before listeners even press play, many of them already have an opinion formed, and that makes it incredibly hard for any young artist to be judged fairly. Plenty of people say having famous parents can feel more like a burden than a blessing. Fame gives the public a ready-made storyline about who you are long before you get a chance to define yourself. In King's case, that storyline has become especially heavy. His name is now tied to questions about identity, the impact of absent parenting, and ongoing suspicion about betrayal within the family. That is an enormous weight for anyone to carry, especially someone still trying to build credibility in music. At this point, his situation has grown into something much bigger than a typical celebrity headline. There is now a deeper narrative attached to him,
one that follows him into every conversation and every public appearance. For an artist still trying to find his place, that kind of pressure can shape everything. It affects how people hear the music, how they interpret his image, and how much grace they are willing to give him. Moments like this can change careers in a major way. Public controversy has the power to elevate someone or completely derail their momentum. Some artists eventually turn painful experiences into powerful material, creating songs that connect with listeners who understand struggle, confusion, and emotional conflict. If that happens, the same turmoil that threatens to define King could also become the raw material for something more meaningful. What could truly separate King from everyone else is honesty. If he leans into the real story of what he has lived through, he may finally carve out a space that belongs to him alone. His experiences are not polished or easy to package. They are complicated, emotional, and deeply personal. Yet that rough edge could be exactly what makes people pay attention. Think about the weight of what he has carried. Feelings of being left behind, the pain of growing up without his father fully present, the constant fight to be seen, valued, and respected. None of that creates a clean or comfortable narrative. His journey is uneven, full of conflict, and marked by real hurt. Still, that truth has value. In music, audiences often connect most strongly to what feels genuine. They respond to struggle when it sounds honest, not manufactured. If King chooses to channel those wounds into his art, he could turn pain into something unforgettable. There is, however, another side to this story. Talent alone will not protect him if his behavior keeps creating headlines for the wrong reasons. Acting without thinking, showing disrespect to people who work around him, mocking vulnerable individuals, and moving recklessly all come at a cost. Those choices can overshadow everything else. Before listeners ever give the music a fair chance, the image may already be damaged. That is the danger he is facing right now. This is why this moment feels so important. King is standing at a crossroads, and what happens next could shape how he is remembered. One path leads toward growth. That route requires discipline, self-control, and a willingness to let the work speak louder than the noise. If he takes that direction, he has a real shot at earning respect for what he can do, not just for the chaos around him. The other path is far less promising. If he keeps feeding the drama, he risks becoming another celebrity child whose name stays attached to controversy instead of accomplishment. The pressure is not only on King. T.I is part of this equation too, and his role matters more than public appearances can hide. If he sincerely wants to repair his relationship with King, that effort has to go deeper than what people see on television or in front of cameras. Surface-level gestures will not heal something this personal. A strained bond cannot be fixed through image management alone. Public discipline and highly visible confrontations do not seem to solve the problem. In fact, they may only make the emotional damage worse. Moments like that can become spectacles, and spectacles rarely build trust. What King appears to need is not a lesson performed for an audience. He seems to be searching for something much more private and much more meaningful: real affection, steady guidance, and support when nobody is watching.
That distinction matters. There is a huge difference between being corrected in public and being cared for in private. One can feel humiliating. The other can actually help someone grow. From the outside, it looks like King is not simply acting out for attention. It feels more like someone wrestling with unresolved pain and wanting reassurance, structure, and connection from the people closest to him. Whether T is his father in name, in presence, or in responsibility, the deeper issue remains the same. King does not just need a public relationship. He needs a real one. He needs consistency. He needs someone who shows up beyond the spotlight. He needs support that is not turned into a performance. Because if the people around him fail to provide that foundation, the instability will keep showing up in his choices, and the consequences could follow him for years. At the center of all of this is a simple but powerful truth. King still has time. His story is not finished. The mistakes, the tension, the pain, and the public scrutiny do not have to define everything that comes next. He can still take those difficult parts of his life and shape them into something meaningful. He can still become an artist people respect for his honesty and growth. Yet that outcome will depend on whether he chooses maturity over impulse and whether the people around him choose genuine support over public performance. Right now, the future could go either way. That uncertainty is exactly what makes this chapter so compelling. There is real potential here,
But there is also real risk. If King embraces the truth of his experiences and turns them into music with depth and purpose, he could connect with people in a major way. If not, the noise may drown out the message before it ever gets the chance to land.
Whether he is King's biological dad or not almost feels secondary at this point. What stands out is who seems dependable when things get difficult. Instead of looking like an enemy in King's life, he appears to be the one person King could turn to when everything else feels uncertain. Family connections are not defined by DNA alone. In the end, what really gives a parent-child bond meaning is consistency, trust, respect, and simply showing up. Those are the things that shape loyalty. Those are the things people remember. For now, though, the tension is not going anywhere. The speculation keeps building, the headlines keep rolling in, and every new update seems to pull even more attention toward the situation. Part of what makes this story so gripping is how raw it feels. There are unanswered questions, hidden layers, and emotions that do not seem polished for the cameras. That is exactly why so many people are locked in. Viewers are fascinated because this no longer looks like the carefully controlled image audiences are used to seeing on television. The Harris family, once presented as polished and put together, is now being viewed through a very different lens. The cracks are no longer easy to hide, and the public can see the tension for themselves. At the center of it all is King Harris, and the choices he makes from here could shape everything. His next steps may decide whether people remember him as a respected artist who found his path, or as another young star whose story became a warning sign. That is what raises the stakes and keeps people watching. One thing seems certain: conversations about King Harris, T.I, and the ongoing family conflict are far from over. This story continues to unfold, and the attention surrounding it does not appear to be fading anytime soon. If you have thoughts on the situation, make sure to subscribe, drop a comment, hit the like button, and join the conversation below.